In just hours, family and friends of Eric Garner will hold protests here in New York to mark 5 years to the day he died after a police officer placed him in a chokehold. The protests also come a day after the Justice Department announced it would not bring federal charges against that officer, who's white. Garner was black, and his final words were this: "I can't breathe," which he said a total of 11 times. Attorney General Bill Barr made the decision not to prosecute and drop a years-long civil rights investigation just as the statute of limitations was set to expire. Garner's mother spoke out this morning.
It's still an insult to injury that they're not going forward with charges, saying that the bar was too high for them to bring charges against him, a federal indictment.
You said you felt...
Back with us, Jason Johnson and Danny Cevallos. Jason, did the decision surprise you?
Not at all. I mean, we literally had Congress vote yesterday to say that the president is a racist, and consequently his administration's actions can be seen in the same light. But Stephanie, I want to make sure everybody understands this. It's not just that Eric Garner died at the hands of the police. It's that he died in an illegal chokehold, and no one was held accountable. In fact, the only person to get arrested in this entire tragedy is the man, the brave individual who had the cell phone camera who took the video of this killing. So
he's in jail right now.
Yeah, exactly. He's in jail. That's the only one who got in any trouble. So this is indicative of an overall pattern in this country of not respecting the lives of individuals who are black and brown, and not holding police, who are government employees, whose jobs we pay for with our taxes, accountable for their actions.
Danny, what is Bill Barr's rationale here?
Well, respectfully to Jason, who I respect so much, first of all, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District concluded that this was not a chokehold. This was an approved hold, a takedown. In addition, there has been no evidence in this case, at least not announced by the U.S. Attorney's Office, that Garner was targeted for his race. And the history of this case shows that even during the Obama administration, the Justice Department bitterly disagreed internally as to whether to bring charges. A Staten Island grand jury declined to indict the officer. And now you have Barr stepping in and, yes, resolving the issue. But that was even a division between the Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York. So at minimum, I think we can fairly say that reasonable minds could disagree as to whether or not this was a crime that should be indicted.
No. This is not a reasonable minds issue, and there's no both sides of this. And I want to make this really clear. I'm not excusing the Obama administration either. A man is dead. He was killed by an illegal choke, and it was an illegal chokehold, and he was killed, and he was consistently targeted, and he complained about it in the video. Now, we can spin around and dance all we want and say, well, this guy died, and we have to understand, and everything else like that. But at the end of the day, people are being killed every single day by police who are not being held accountable.
Oh, that part I agree with.
And if the government's job is to protect the public, then when police kill someone, they should be held accountable if they cannot explain how that person was an immediate threat to themselves, the officers, or someone else in the community. That is the larger issue here.
What did they conclude from the video? When he said, "I can't breathe," was he in that chokehold, Danny?
No, he was not. The chokehold, well, I shouldn't say the chokehold, but the way the U.S. Attorney's Office described it was a rear takedown. Right. And admittedly, as he was falling in the melee, he shifted his arm so that it was over his neck. Jason, I absolutely admit that. But the point that the U.S. Attorney's Office made is that he didn't start saying, "I can't breathe," until after he was down and the other brother officers were on top of him. And I agree. I mean, this is an arrest that probably shouldn't have happened. But to decide whether this officer is liable under this particular federal civil rights statute, a criminal statute that requires, Jason, and this is, you could talk to the Congress folks who enacted the law, it requires such a high standard of knowledge, willfully violating the law, not accidentally, not a bad judgment. It is a very difficult case to bring for the government. I'm a defense attorney. I often think the police overstep their boundaries, but I also am aware that this particular statute has such a high standard. That's why government officials often decline to prosecute.
The subjective opinion of William Barr is not something that can be trusted given what we understand about the motivations of this administration. That's the first thing. The second thing is this. Again, it was an illegal chokehold. And second, he was not resisting. The man was literally standing there when they jumped him. We see it right there in the video. And he starts screaming, "I can't breathe," and then other people jump on top of him. The man was no longer a threat to anybody under any circumstances, and police continue to use unnecessary and excessive force. So I don't care if it was their intention. Someone still died for excessive force. And that is a problem. And to the degree, and not that I say that these laws are perfectly fine, to the degree that this can happen on a regular basis and every single statistic that we have seen seems that it happens to black and brown people more, that is a larger problem in this country.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.